Hey guys, Josh with Finishing Lines. Today we're going to be doing some work on this EG Coupe that we have behind us. This car is owned by Marcos Oliva. If you are not familiar with Marcos, he had the baddest all-motor CRX on the planet. It was a B-Series Nitro car that ran 8s in the quarter. Unfortunately, he was in a bad accident at the end of last year, and although Marcos was okay, the chassis was not salvageable. So he's switching everything over to this car, and we offered to plumb it for him. We just thought we'd take you along for the ride and show you some cool content. Hope you guys enjoy.
Yeah, learn to watch. Stacking my guap. Wait in the pot. Hey, rubbing the spot. Learn to watch.
Okay, so here's a quick visual rundown of how we are setting up Marco's system and how we set up most front-wheel drive race car systems. Keep in mind, I did plumb Marco's car all in hardline. Most of our kits you're going to find on the website are going to be flex hose kits due to ease of installation. This was an in-house custom build, but the principles are the same, so it should help you a ton so that you understand how the system's set up. So we have a booster delete, we have our Finishing Lines booster delete with the Woodwood master cylinder and the billet reservoir. So basically what we've done is we have run one line, in this case hard line, to a bulkhead on the firewall. Now this setup is pretty similar to what we call like our Sport Front Wheel Drive V2 setup, which is the tucked style setup. So the only lines in the engine bay will be the line from master cylinder to the firewall. In our flex line kits, we actually set these up so that they kind of go the opposite way. One flex hose running over here more to the center of the car. I just decided to do this on Marcos just to be a little bit different, just kind of unique type of setup. So coming on the inside of the car, we have the bulkhead coming through, and like on our Sport Front Wheel Drive V2 kits that we typically sell, we'll use a T. I just decided to do this once again a little bit differently just to be custom and one-off. We ran that from one hard line up to a T-fitting inside, and then that T-fitting basically is splitting out to each front brake. So this first coming off the side of the T, this hard line, you can see bends back towards the firewall, comes down, and then that goes to our bulkhead that feeds the backside of our wheel wells, where we have a small hard line that is connected to the caliper hose feeding the driver's side front brake. Now the top outlet of that port, basically I have hard line running the entire length, and then coming down once again to a bulkhead, and that goes to the back side of the passenger side wheel well, which once again will have another hard line in the wheel well and the passenger side that connects to the caliper hose feeding the passenger side front brake. So I get a common question about handbrake systems, and I thought I'd use Marco's car here as an example of one way to set up a system. So typically with staging brakes, you can run a reservoir style staging brake or you can run a pass-through style staging brake. So with a reservoir style, basically that is an independent system. Basically it has its own reservoir to supply fluid. These systems we use in what we call split systems. Now that's how we're going to be setting up Marco's car. Split systems are typically for front wheel drive setups. So with a front wheel drive setup that you're running rear skinnies more specifically, you do not want to keep the rear brakes connected to the pedal operation just in case you stab the brakes a little too hard. You basically have a very small contact patch with a skinny rear tire. You can flat spot or lock up a rear skinny more easily. So we just take that out of the equation. We disconnect the ability to brake from the pedal to the rear. So the front brakes are connected to the pedal only. The rear brakes are operated on the handle only. So in this type of system, I'm just going to kind of briefly show you how we set that up. So since we're running a split system, we just talked about how we run the front brakes off the pedal only. So now the rear brakes are going to be run off the handle only. So in Marco's system, once again, I decided to do this in hard line to be a little bit bougie, but that's okay. Most of our kits are going to be flex hose for simplicity. In this case, you've got a reservoir style master cylinder, and this uses one of our finishing lines reservoir master cylinders. So we have that installed. Of course, fluid in the reservoir will feed the rear brakes as an independent system. We actually have this running into a hydro lock that'll allow you to lock the rear brakes without holding the handle if you need to. And then we're feeding that into a bulkhead on top of the tunnel. That is basically going to a T underneath and then feeding each rear caliper for the independent system. Another thing to note with the hydrolocks, Marcos is using a B series setup, so he has more room for the shifter to the left or right of the staging brake, so he can use the left or right hand mounted hydrolock setup. In this case, we did the left hand mounted just so it faces the driver and gives a little more ease of use. It is still going to be tucked down next to the side of the shifter, so it's kind of a personal preference with a B series whether you want to reach around the other side or have it face you. This is just what we chose for some convenience for him. But in K series applications with the shifter mounted above the tunnel, you don't have this luxury. So if you are left-hand drive and you have a K series with your shifter on top of the tunnel, you're not going to have room for this valve in between the handbrake and the shifter itself. So you will want to use a right hand mounted that mounts to the opposite side, and keep in mind just the difference in that is simply this hard line we provide for the plumbing. The entire backplate, clamp, assembly, valve, everything is able to be flipped from right to left. It's just the plumbing of the hard line to it has a flipped orientation when you use it in the right hand mounted form, but that would be preferred. And then keep in mind, if you're a right hand drive, all that information will be a mirror of one another. So for Marco's clutch setup, we decided to do more hardline work, and we are plumbing in a really tucked fashion. And then we're also using a Magnus valve, and we put a provision in for a clutch pressure sensor. So let's show you the details. So it starts with one of our clutch master cylinder adapters, adapted to a Willwood master cylinder with a billet reservoir. And then we have a titanium banjo bolt. It's a titanium, burnt titanium finish, hard line. The red AN nut's going to a bulkhead. That comes out to the bulkhead here, which runs across and goes to a Magnus valve. From the Magnus valve, we are feeding this fitting, which is going to be for a clutch pressure sensor. And then this is going down to another bulkhead. That bulkhead's coming out on the bottom of the engine bay. Which is located right there. And then we'll be running a flex hose from that all the way up to the slave cylinder on the front of the trains.
Yeah, learn how to watch. Stacking my guap. Waiting to pop. Hey, rubbing the spot. Learn to